Welcome back, everyone. We live in an era of social change, and maybe not all this social change is good. You see adults like ourselves saying things in public forums with the language that I haven't heard before. And you wonder how that affects your children. And then when you think about your children, you think that they have social media, which is a whole new norm and a whole new way of communicating. And the anonymity of that communication, sometimes people hide behind, kids hide behind. Joining me today is somebody who really knows what I'm talking about really well, and a frequent guest here on Look Media. This is Maggie Fronk, who is the CEO, the president of Wellspring in Saratoga. Welcome back, Mag.
Hey, Jesse, how are you?
Great to have you here. I attended a workshop recently, which is why I asked Maggie if I could come in for an interview. And Maggie, at that workshop, for somebody who would tend to think that, okay, I'm pretty aware of the world and what goes on, I was really taken back by the subtleties of some of the things that were presented in this workshop. Relationship to control and to power. And I couldn't shake it. It stayed with me. Mm-hmm. Let's go back. You did this workshop recently. And given what I just said to the audience, frame this a bit for us as to why you had that workshop.
Okay. We offered a workshop for influential adults who are influential in teenagers' lives, so that they could learn more about dating violence and sexual violence as it affects teenagers. Mm-hmm. And these were people who are school counselors, who are educators, who work in nonprofits that help youth. They're folks who have a really good understanding of issues, and yet in the day conference, they came back saying, wow, we got a much more in-depth understanding of this and the nuances of it. And so I think that's the point. You're an educated man. We've talked about these issues so many times. Mm-hmm. You understand them. I like to say we understand them with the 4-inch brushstroke. What this conference was about was giving people the nuances so that they can walk through the world with different eyes and see the subtlety in things rather than seeing when the crisis happens.
Well, I'm sure you see this as a part of the mission of Wellspring, right?
Very much so.
Just in case our audience doesn't know Wellspring.
So Wellspring is the Domestic Violence Services Agency for Saratoga County, and also provides sexual assault services in Saratoga and Washington counties. Mm-hmm.
And when we think of abuse, a lot of times people would go immediately to physical abuse.
Absolutely.
They might think about it for a second and then go to sexual abuse. However, it goes a lot deeper than that, doesn't it?
There are a lot of nuances, and you can actually have a very abusive relationship that does not have any physical abuse. So there's emotional control, psychological control, there's social isolation, financial control. Very often, I think when somebody hits you, we all know that's wrong, no matter what. But when somebody puts you down, makes you question your judgment, you never know what you're coming home to, and you're spending your life walking on eggshells, that's harder. And very often people don't see that as domestic violence, although those kind of tactics can be even more controlling.
Right. A couple of words we're using here, and I want to just go to them because I think they're the heart of the matter. Control and power. When I opened the interview, I mentioned how as adults you're hearing language now in tweets and things that you think to yourself, oh, this is terrible discourse. Why are people speaking this way? And then of course it has the effect on the children. A lot of that is done for power and control. And then on social media, peer to peer, teenager to teenager, it manifests itself again.
Very much so. And that is very much a communication system today. And what's different? When you and I sit down and talk, even if we disagree, we have a chance to talk it through, but we've gotten to a really high-paced communications where we're not looking at the other person. We're not reading the signs and having that kind of communication, and things just become very quick and sometimes thoughtless.
Yeah, sure. Or manipulative. Right? There was one, and I can't give it back to you exactly the way it was in the exchange that you showed in the workshop, but it was something to the effect where a boyfriend was saying to a girlfriend, oh, I thought you really loved me, or something, or I didn't know I was dating a prude, right? Mm-hmm. And you think to yourself, that's manipulation. This person's trying to get something from the other person that maybe he doesn't even have the courage to do face to face. So now all of a sudden we've ramped this up because they can hide behind social media. How do you deal with that? You see this, people are saying this to you. What do you say back to them?
We certainly talk with people about how social media can be used to control someone. And we carry our phones in our pockets, we carry our worlds in our pockets sometimes.
Right.
And for youth, that's really true. Their entire world, everyone they know, the folks they communicate with are a part of that system, and it's 24/7. Back when I went to school, if somebody said something to you at school, you left school and that went away. But now, those kind of things, saying that I didn't know you were a prude, that can get shared with everyone on social media, or a picture you sent can get shared, or with one touch of a keyboard stroke, that can go out to everyone that you care about.
You know, if you're watching this, think about what she just said. If you ran into trouble at school, you left school. You went home, and by the way, you also maybe had someone to talk to about it. You might have had your sister, your brother, your mother, your father, right?
Yeah.
A relative to talk about it. So you could put it in perspective. How difficult is it for teenagers today not to be able to put it in perspective because it's their own universe?
It's their universe, and what gets put out stays out there in that
Yes,
universe
right.
too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of power behind this tool we have. And I think every kind of technology has had its pros and its cons. I'm not going to give up my cell phone. On the other
That's
hand,
right.
technologies can also have a downside. And we see with cyber abuse the downside of our technology.
So if we go to the other side of this, after laying this framework out, what are some of the constructive things that people should think about based on this conversation? They've got a teenager, for instance. How do you communicate with that teenager?
I think you set ground rules ahead of time. You kind of talk about phones and how they're used, when they're used. Do the phones get taken away at night so that folks can get a good night's sleep? Mm-hmm. You check in on what your kid's doing on social media. Maybe, you're friends with them on whatever their social media platform is too, so you can see. And more than that, you open up the lines of communication saying these things happen. Don't ever be afraid to come and talk to me about it. You don't have to deal with things yourself. And I think kids are always afraid to tell their parents things, but once you start these conversations, their parent is the most influential person in their life.
Well, one of the things that was said at the workshop, which is like when a valve opens, right? If that relationship can be established, then as soon as that valve is open, it floods. Because then there's a sense of safety, there's a sense of, understanding maybe, and off you go. In this sort of adult world that we're in now, which even as an adult is confusing, advice from men to be, some of the examples that Maggie and I were talking about was men will say things that if another guy heard it, we'd be high-fiving each other. Oh, that was funny, Jim. Maybe it isn't funny.
Yeah, I think things have come a long way there, and we've still got some places to go. We get some men together on occasion to talk about these issues, and it's kind of funny. After we've seen some videos or heard some things, I know some of the male members of our group have come back and said, I went to my golf game, or I walked through my life, and I saw things differently. And it made me think about the things that I've just been conversations I've been participating in, the jokes I've been participating in, and maybe I don't want to do that anymore.
Maggie said something to me. She said, and I like this. I wrote it down. It says, walk through the world with different eyes. Yeah. We could all do that regardless of our age. And when you think about how it might affect our own behavior, but also the behavior of our loved ones or the people that we have relationships with and whatever, and just try to spread that sort of, hey, be more aware. Now here at Wellspring, and that's where we are today, you provide a lot of services here, primarily for women.
No, we serve men, women, or children.
No, I know you do,
Yeah,
but I was just saying primarily.
Yes, these
primarily
issues
women.
do disproportionately affect women, but anyone who's a victim of domestic violence, relationship, or sexual abuse can come to our agency.
Sure. So if someone's out there is watching this and thinks, geez, I know somebody, maybe they ought to talk to Wellspring or whatever, the door is open here, right? And all kinds of counseling services.
Yep, the door's open. Free and confidential services 24/7. You can call our hotline or you can come to our office, and you yourself don't even need to be the person who's experiencing the abuse. You can have someone in your life you're worried about. It could be your son or daughter. It could be your mother or father. It could be a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, or your employee. You can come and say, I'm worried about this person. How can I be supportive, and what do I need to know to keep to support that person, but also to keep myself safe in it, and maybe to keep my workplace safe.
Wow, got it. You know, in a world that you hear, well, we have to be careful because that might become the new normal. And generally speaking, that has a lot to do with the desensitizing just the way people feel and speak about each other. How about we ramp that side up a little bit more? How about we become a little more sensitive to not only what we're saying, but how that might be perceived by somebody. Double check ourselves, whether you're a teenager or an adult, to say, hey, what's the effect of what I'm saying to this person? Am I trying to control a situation that maybe I shouldn't be controlling? And please, if you know someone, yourself or a friend or something that might benefit from Wellspring services, contact them. It's wellspringcares.org, right?
That's right.
Yeah, got it, Maggie. Well, you please let me know when there's another workshop. I tell you, I learned a lot.
Excellent. We have these great conversations afterwards, and that's what it's all about.
It is great to see you, Mag.
Absolutely. Always fun to be here.
Thanks for inviting us. See this interview again. You can head to our website, looktvonline.com.